Field Report, Narrative and Supplement, Case Number P96-21871. Date of the report, 12/26/1996. 1300, Complainant, Victim, Ramsey. Description, Narrative. I responded to 755 15th Street in the city and county of Boulder, Colorado, at approximately 555 hours on the 26th of December, 1996, on a report of a possible kidnapping. Upon arrival, I met with a distraught Patsy Ramsey and her husband, John. John advised me that their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét, was missing, and that their 9-year-old son, Burke, was asleep upstairs. John directed me through the house and pointed out a 3-page handwritten note which was laid on the wooden floor just west of the kitchen area. He told me that his wife had found the note on the bottom step of a spiral staircase which led to the upper levels of the house. I'm uncertain about who moved the note. The note advised the Ramseys that their daughter was in the possession of a group of suspects and demanded a ransom of $118,000 to be delivered by means detailed to them later in a subsequent telephone call. I spoke with Mr. and Ms. Ramsey while Burke continued to sleep. Ms. Ramsey told me that she had gone into JonBenét's room at about 545 hours to wake her in preparation for a short trip the family was to later take that day. She found JonBenét's room empty and then discovered the note as she walked down the stairs. She immediately called the police. A quick inspection of the interior of the house, as well as talking to Mr. Ramsey, indicated that there was no obvious signs of a forced entry or struggle. Mr. Ramsey told me that the house appeared to be locked up as it had been left. The Ramseys have an alarm system inside of the house, which was not engaged as is normal for them. They have a small dog, but he had spent the night with a neighbor across the street, which is also normal. Both Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey stated that they had not heard anything unusual during the night, as there was no initial refuting evidence. I advised Sergeant Reichenbach that it was possibly an actual kidnapping, and we proceeded to control the scene as such, with Sergeant Reichenbach paging advocates, detectives, and crime scene investigators. Within 15 minutes, blank and blank and blank, all friends of the Ramseys arrived at the house. By 0650, Officer Weiss and Officer Barklow were photographing and fingerprinting areas of the house, and Officer Veach had collected the ransom note. Reverend Blank of St. John's Episcopal Church in Boulder came to the house at 0713, joining victim advocates blank and blank in the house with the others. Detectives Linda Arndt and Fred Patterson arrived at the house at about 0810 hours. I was concerned with gathering information from Mr. and Ms. Ramsey. They told me that they had spent Christmas night with the blank, and that they arrived home at 2200 hours. Mr. Ramsey said he read to both kids for a short time, and then they were in bed by 2230 hours. Ms. Ramsey said that JonBenét had been dressed in white long underwear and a red turtleneck. JonBenét's and Burke's bedrooms are separate and are located on the second floor of the 3-story house, with the master bedroom on the top floor. JonBenét's bedroom has an access door to a second-floor porch, which was locked and undamaged. As Mr. Ramsey made preliminary telephone calls to gather the demanded amount of money, he told me that the only other people with keys to the house are their housekeeper, blank, and 2 relatives in Atlanta, Georgia. Ms. Ramsey told me that blank had spoken to her by telephone on the morning of the 24th and asked for a loan of $2,000. Blank had called again later that day and seemed upset about an argument with her sister. and she made plans with Ms. Ramsey to come by the Ramseys' house while they were out of town and pick up a check which the Ramseys would leave for them when blank Patricia Ramsey's mother was advised by telephone of the incident. She asked that the officers on scene be told of blank, often commenting on how beautiful JonBenét was and if Ms. Ramsey was concerned about her being kidnapped. Mrs. Paw's comments were relayed to me by blank. These factors relating to blank were given to Detective Arndt, and she began to develop background information on blank. Ms. Ramsey told me further that blank lived in Fort Lupton with her husband, blank, and a 12-year-old daughter, blank. Hoffman also had 2 adult daughters in their 20s, blank and blank, and she rents the house she lives in from her sister, unknown name. 2 other possible suspects were given by the Ramseys. One was an ex-employee who had been fired during the past summer and had threatened to bring Access Graphics down Mr. Ramsey's business. His name is blank. Mr. Ramsey contacted his personnel department to gather information on blank for the detectives. The second person mentioned was blank, who lives in Louisville. She was JonBenét's nanny up until 2 years ago and had a very close relationship with her. This relationship was the only reason blank was mentioned, as the Ramseys were trying to allow for all possibilities. Between times of consulting with the detectives and the family, I walked through the lower level of the house and the garage looking for obvious evidence. Although somewhat messy due to the season, the residence did not look out of order. In the basement, I attempted to open the door leading to the area where JonBenét was ultimately found, but it was secured by a wooden latch above the door. The door opened inward, and I was looking for access out of the house. Since the door could not have been used for that purpose, and it was latched closed, I did not open it. Shortly after, Detective Sergeant Whitson arrived at the house. After 1,000, I was released from the scene and went to the police department to begin the original report. Just after 1,300 hours, I heard radio traffic concerning a 911 call and the discovery of a cold black body at the residence, and I returned to 755 15th with Officer Morgan. I spoke with blank, and he told me that JonBenét had been found in the basement by Mr. Ramsey while blank and Mr. Ramsey were looking through the house. Mr. Blank told me that he had opened the door to that area earlier in the morning and had not seen JonBenét's body inside. I secured the area around where Mr. Ramsey had laid the body and assisted in getting the family and friends out of the house to close the crime scene. I left the house for the second time at approximately 3:45 hours, and Officer Weiss and Shunk were securing the front and back, respectively. Burke Ramsey was awakened by his father shortly after blank arrived, and he was taken to the blank residence as soon as he was dressed. I did not speak to him other than to walk him to Mr. Blank's vehicle. He seemed confused and was crying, and Mr. Ramsey again told me that he had slept through the night. Evidence: CPCRs concerning collection of Officer Veach, Weiss, and Marklow. Conclusion: preliminary indications of the abduction of JonBenét Ramsey from the residence give way upon the discovery of her body in the residence. A homicide investigation is begun and continued by detectives, with the reclassification of this incident to be forthcoming. Should this be 15:45 hours. Signed, Reporting Officer Rick French, number 644.